This is NEGOTIATEx TV.
Welcome to the NEGOTIATEx podcast. I am your co-host, Nolan Martin, and with me today is the master of conflict resolution, Aram Denesian. Aram, how are you doing?
Well, Nolan, I thought you were just going to say the master of conflict, which many of my friends would probably agree with. I'm not sure about conflict resolution. I'm not sure I even like that title, but since we're talking about conflict today, it's probably as good a title as any. So I am doing well. How are you doing? I'm sure you never have any conflict in your life.
Nope. I don't have any kids, so I think that's why. So we are excited to be talking about conflict. Man,
you know, they say kids and conflict both begin with K.
Yeah,
that's a joke for our Army friends who know we can't spell or count. So
that's a Marine joke.
We're gonna hear back on that one.
All right. So today we're talking about conflict resolution, conflict management, and just conflict in the workplace. And so first, just kind of want to pose this question to you, Aram, is in your negotiating experience, how often do you have to deal or overcome with conflict in the workplace as a part of the negotiation or anything like that?
I'd say it shows up almost daily, really almost daily. And I think it's all around us. It's in how we design products. It's how we think about price. It's how we approach policy concerns when we're making plans. If I'm going to stay on my little box here with P's, I'd probably add personalities are always coming in as another source of conflict. It shows up all the time, and the challenge is that none of us, no matter how experienced we are, love it. There's just a universal, fairly universal high level of discomfort with these sources of conflict.
Yeah, I mean, you could ask my wife, but definitely proximity to her with me for long periods of time is going to end up in some sort of conflict. But all joking aside, I do want to highlight here the quote kind of we have from Dr. Michelle Buck, and she really talks about the difference between what most people say is conflict resolution versus conflict transformation. So I want to read this quote and then get your thoughts on if that works for you. All right, so conflict resolution suggests going back to a previous state of affairs and has a connotation that there may be a winner or a loser. In contrast, I focus on conflict transformation, suggesting that by creatively navigating the conversational landscape of differences and disagreements, we have the opportunity to create something new. At a minimum, we learn more about each other than before. Ideally, we may find new possibilities that had not even been considered before. Conflict transformation is about creating a deeper understanding. It requires perspective taking. As a result, it enables greater connection, whether or not there is agreement. And again, this is from Dr. Michelle Buck, Kellogg School of Management, in an interview with Brene Brown with Braving the Wilderness. So want to get your thoughts on that. And, are you aligned with Dr. Buck?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a brilliant statement. And it fits in well, by the way, with Dr. Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness, which I think is a must read by everyone. And so much of this, Nolan, is in the framing of conflict. Is conflict the signal that something is broken and wrong with us or me or organization? Or is conflict indicative of an opportunity to learn, grow, and that's just a natural thing in growth, in process and development, and it should be embraced as this wonderful opportunity? And that framing is critical. And so to me, that's the difference between, is this something we're trying to resolve or fix, or is this something that's we're going to utilize to transform us?
Yeah, I think, we were talking about the spectrum of resolving conflict. And as we let conflict continue to kind of build and we don't address it, it ends up becoming, going to a point that really you're in a win-lose situation. So wanted to generally explain that spectrum if you wanted to go that way.
Sure. Yeah. So, what we're talking about is in his book, The Mediation Process by Chris Moore. Chris Moore lays out this nice kind of spectrum of, starts on one end with kind of resolution versus another end where we go up to, kind of this violent sort of outbreak. When conflict is dealt with and how it's dealt with, and there's, it's fairly wide. Um, and I think that the tendency that most people have is to go to extremes. That either tend to avoid the conflict altogether, which means it never gets dealt with, and it's like poisonous fumes that you've tried to bury or something. It never tends to really work. Or people go to they so uncomfortable trying to handle it. There's some sort of violent outburst, and because of those two tendencies, conflict often doesn't get addressed and transformed, as Dr. Buck would say, in a way that's helpful. And so we need to find helpful ways to use that conflict, and that's what you and I would say is going to come through some of those problem solving approaches that include things like negotiation and mediation.
Yeah, and I think as a leader, there are different ways that you want to address conflict. So, do you want to quickly kind of go over the Tuckman model?
Yeah. So I would say first, so to your point, let me just build on what you were going to say, and then I'll certainly is to say, I think that's a huge decision as a leader. So just because someone is a leader in their organization, whatever that organization is, doesn't mean they have this, like, all of a sudden they're immune to the stress of managing conflict more effectively. I mean, they're human, and so they have just as much of a kind of discomfort with it as anyone else. So I think the leader has to say, regardless of my own comfort level, I am going to address this. And I am going to manage it in a productive way. I'm going to be really intentional. So I think that's a mindset for a leader to really consider as you get put in that position. So the Tuckman model, Bruce Tuckman's model that you refer to, is the idea, and many of us have heard this around team development, right? So the idea of you form as a team, you go through some storming around some of the sources of conflict. There's usually some tension there. From there, you move into we start to normalize, we start to develop SOPs, ways to work together. We start to deal with some of that, and then we get into the perform phase, which is when we're really executing. Now, in that perform phase, there's no less conflict than there was earlier on. Although maybe the nature of the conflict has shifted a little bit, and it's more around maybe task or process. But we have methods for dealing with it, and we have an investment in the relationship, so we have something to draw on, and that's where, as a leader, I want to get my team to. Which means, and I'll be quiet and kind of let you respond here, but it means we need to embrace the early phases of storming and not quickly skip through it. Teams, organizations, I would even say that in business relationships, they will do better in the long run when some storming has been allowed, and teams effectively are guided through that by a leader who can, effectively transform conflict.
Yeah, I think through both of our military careers, this has been an instrumental process. The Army encourages it through the after action review, but I would say backing up is, as a leader, when you first come into that new role, or you realize that you need to encourage this in the workplace, it's definitely important that you build a culture where not everyone is in agreement at all times. Like, if everyone is agreeing with me, then I know we have issues, because I know that I am not the smartest person in the room. So I rely on some pushback, and I think you're going to get a better solution by creating that environment and having and encouraging that pushback. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. And it requires two things. It requires some vulnerability on the leader to be wrong, which is a real hard thing for leaders to get over, right? I got to get over myself, and the potential that I am wrong and I don't have all the information and I am incapable of making the perfect decision that I need to hear from others. And so there's some vulnerability there. I got to show my underbelly a little bit. And that is really difficult, regardless of your industry, regardless of your business. The second thing is that the people around me who I'm inviting into that conversation that you just described have to feel safe to do that. that if they are going to criticize, if they are going to push back, that they are not going to be threatened somehow, and that it is completely safe and acceptable. So what you're talking about with developing a culture around that is critical, and it doesn't happen just automatically. It's something that a leader has to really do with tremendous discipline.
Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NEGOTIATEx TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you in your small business, your team are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to NEGOTIATEx.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over in the next video.